I am back with another episode of the Embodied Business Show. And today I say I'm excited all the time, but I'm super, super excited today
I'll
because
take that as a compliment.
I have got my long-term mentor, Alexi Panos, sitting here with me. And I'm so excited to have you on the show.
We're going to go deep on all the things.
All of them. And everyone who's been listening to this podcast for years, they've heard your name a million times.
Awesome.
And I'm just so excited to have you here because you know so much about my story. I know so much about yours. So I
Yeah.
feel like we get to the juice.
Let's get to
So
it.
juicy.
Yeah, let's make some juice today.
Yeah. All of it.
All of it, yes.
Embodied business. But the thing I really want to start with, because, I feel like I've sort of witnessed your journey as well through how long I've been with you. It's been almost a decade.
Is that crazy?
Yeah, it's like nuts.
Wild.
And I actually did a live this morning on my Instagram talking about what happens when you have someone who really holds the vision for you. And I feel like you and P have done that so much for us as a couple.
Yes.
And the thing I really want to lean into today is your work with the Muse.
Yeah.
Because I feel like that opened portals for me. When you started going there, I started going there, things happen.
It is that. It's that type of work because the frequency of it is so different, I think, from everything else I've done.
Yeah.
And just speaking kind of in seasons or chapters of life, right? I think when you first came into my world as a student and someone that I was working with, I was very much still in my wounded masculine journey of proving and building from this space of trying to fill a void, not consciously, of course, but unconsciously.
Yeah.
Right. And I loved my work. I loved what I did. I felt on purpose. So it was very insidious, but there was an addiction to the success. There was an addiction to creating more, to earning more, to doing more and being more in the world that I wasn't quite aware of yet. And I think vibrationally, we always attract where we're coming from, right? So you were very much in that space too. And I think as a whole, in society, if we look at generally speaking, I would say the majority of the world is in that place still. And it's not wrong or bad, but at some point we wake up to a new season and we get initiated often through rock bottom moments or those hit you over the head with a 2x4 moment or crying on the bathroom floor moment where you're like, this isn't working. I need to do something else. And I think when I hit that moment in my relationship with Preston, where it's okay, shit or get off the pot. We're either going to get divorced and move on, or we're going to make this work. And what would it require of me as a woman to make this work? And that was a really painful question to sit in for a long time, but it was this work of the Muse where it was this feminine awakening, and awakening to the internal journey of who am I? How am I most attuned and aligned to myself? How does that aligned self want to express in the world? How does it want to move through the body? And those are really uncomfortable questions to ask for a woman that was living from her head up. It's what do you mean? How does it want to express in the body? I do not understand what you're saying. And I had to really go through this cognitive dissonance of thinking I was leading embodiment work. I was leading trauma work. I was leading somatic work, but it was all very much through a rigid masculine lens.
Yeah.
And the work of the Muse, what we've created in our work, it is a deep feminine embodiment that has a different texture and tonality. And it is a wave. It's a wave of aliveness, and you can't fucking stop it. What? You cannot. It is a portal. And when you enter that portal, you are hold on for dear life. Who is this person? And you kind of wake up to this version of you that you didn't even know was possible. And then you're oh, I get how everything in my life might have to shift now because I'm fully here, and I'm not creating or building or working from this deficit place, but I'm building and creating and working and relating and doing intimacy from my fullness, from my full expression. And that is a whole different life.
Completely different life. I'm just even in the last month being so much closer to you, so much has opened up. Also, I want to share a win. We just got approved for an incredible house yesterday, and it's my dream house.
Yes. Oh my God, that's amazing.
Yeah, but it's a testament to this work, right?
You're in the vortex.
in it, so deep in it right now.
And this is magnetism, right? Like we hear the word magnetism and it's like, oh, cool, magnetism. It's like so fluffy and like it's a concept.
Yeah.
But that's what it is. It's like you're fully online and vibrating from your fullness. So like everything that's meant for you is like, oh, hi, there you are. I can see you. I can feel you now.
Yeah. And I remember when you first started this work, because I was actually working for Preston in Kaboom at the time, right? So I was literally your employee, like and I'm seeing the behind the scenes of like, he's getting cracked the fuck open.
Oh, yeah.
And also I'm just like in awe of how you two were also navigating it, because I knew that there was big stuff going on.
Oh, yeah.
And, you know, for a lot of people, they instantly look at you guys and they put you on a pedestal and they're like, they've got it all. They're doing it all. They, you know, you've been famous for a long time and all the things. But what they actually don't realize is to go through that level of work and hold integrity in yourself. That's a huge piece.
Huge.
Yeah.
And it's one of those things where, you know, you have to take a dose of humility in those spaces because, well, the old version of me had to take a dose of humility because she didn't want to admit like, oh my gosh, something's wrong.
Yeah.
Right. Because it's like, I have the tools. I know what to do. Like, how did we get to this point? Right. But humans are complicated and it's not so black and white. Like you can have the tools and you're still dealing with another sovereign being who has wounding and all the things. And then your wounding is matching their wounding and all the things are happening. And so what I realize now is that like humility is the gateway and really humbling ourselves to the human experience of like, fuck, I am a human. Humans are messy. Humans are complicated. This is crazy. That is the portal to the deepest awakening we can have is when we stop trying to fix it or get it right and recognize that everything is actually perfect in its mess and that the mess is here to awaken us to a deeper truth, awaken us to a deeper sense of self, invite us into more of our expression and fullness versus, oh my gosh, something's wrong. I need to fix it. How do we get out of this thing? Because it feels really uncomfortable. And I don't like the discomfort.
Yeah.
And so that's been a huge part of both Preston and my journey coming back in together is like recognizing, like being with the discomfort of like, this is okay that it's not fully figured out yet.
Yeah.
Like we may be in this for a lifetime figuring it out, but can we love the process of figuring it out together?
Yeah. I love that so much as well, because I remember, you know, we've both, Urbane and I have worked with you guys separately for years. And then at the beginning of last year, we're like, all right, we're going to do it together now moving forward.
Yes.
And we literally came in at that time being like, this is make or break for us.
Yes. I remember that. I remember that.
And we were just like, I don't know what the next like 12 months looks like, but you guys, like, because of the way that you held that lens, it became such a permission for us to not have to get it right in the process. And I think not a lot of women give themselves space to have that.
Yeah.
Like they don't allow themselves to fall apart. And that's one thing I've appreciated about you the most is you've always been so truthful in it. And I remember someone said to me, they're like, how would you describe Lex? Like it was one of my clients. And I was like, if I could give her one word, it would be the word grace.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Thank you.
But it's because you're so, like, when you're around you, it's so truthful. There's not anything that I feel like I have to hide or I have to, like, you know, because you're such a permission slip.
Yeah.
And that's, once again, like, that's the work that, you know, you've done over the last few years. Yeah.
Is to be okay with my not okayness.
Yeah.
And that would have been impossible for me a decade ago. Like, that would have been really edgy for me.
Yeah. So I'm curious because, like, and just to give someone, like, a lot of the people who know you in this work now, they know you from the self-development space.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I had this epiphany like about a year ago when you were like, oh yeah, I worked with Ja Rule. I'm like, what?
Yeah.
Like,
hold on.
I'm like, I've been listening to you since I was 13. That's why I'm like, oh, like.
No wonder why I felt this kindred spirit with you.
Like that Murder Rain song that you were in, like I literally, as soon as it came out, had to buy the album. I was like addicted to that song.
Crazy.
So I just found it so mind blowing. And I was like, I was telling Jay, like, you know, one of your other clients, one of my best friends, like, I was telling all these people, I'm like, did you know that that's her on the song?
Yeah.
Like, you know, to come from like the music industry that is so opposite to the world you live now, like
polar opposite.
Like, What allowed you, because like you also grew up with the self-development
Yeah.
and that with your mum being in this work. Like, how did you allow yourself to be like, okay, I'm going to explore this, but then what made you choose to come back to like really landing fully in your mission? Like, what's alive for you now?
Such a great question. It's so interesting because I think I got into like Tony Robbins and Marianne Williamson and Wayne Dyer super early, but mostly Tony. Like Tony was my guy. Like I went to all, yeah, I was like doing all the Tony events, jumping like I was 16 at the arenas.
Yeah.
Um, I love Tony. And I also did Landmark pretty young as well.
Yeah.
And so I had this amazing kind of meta understanding of how humans work. And at the time, it was pretty surface level for me. I was a teenager, but I
Mm.
got what I got,
Yeah.
right? And I got this opportunity basically at 15 to come into the music industry. And I got in on a dare. Like my sister's friend, like we used to spend the summers with our friends, and my sister's friend was a singer
Yeah.
and a performer. And she was like one of those girls that was like would be on Broadway, right? She's like a musical theater kid. And we were looking in the newspaper for movie times to go see a movie. And there was like a classified ad, like singers wanted, putting together a girl group. And this is like the Spice Girls and Christina Aguilera, Britney Spears. Like it was that era
Yeah.
of like the boy bands and the girl groups and all the things. And she's like, Lex, I dare you to do it. And my whole thing as a kid was like, I never turned down a dare. So
Yeah.
I was like, well, I have to do it. So we call in and you have to sing over like a voicemail. And then they called you back if you got like your call back. And then we go like 20 minutes out of town from where my mom lived in Pleasantville, New Jersey. And we're in like this weird part of town, and there's this like beautiful recording studio that's gated with all these like fancy cars, Rolls Royces and all the things. And we're like, what is this place? Like we're in like
Mm.
the weirdest part of town right now. And like here's this place, and there's a line out the door. Everyone looks like Britney Spears, like dressed up, all the things. So we get in line, and then we have to go into the studio and sing for this group of people. And I sing Hit Me Baby One More Time. And they're like, okay, like hang out over here for a little bit. Who's here? Your mom? Okay, we're going to talk to you guys in a little bit. Sure enough, it ends up being Rodney Jerkins. And Rodney Jerkins, who I didn't know at the time, was like this super kid producer who I think he was like 20 at the time. He had done like Brandy and Monica, Destiny's Child, Michael Jackson, Whitney Houston. I mean, like super kid producer.
Yeah.
And they're like, we want to do a development deal with you, which is basically like, we want to nurture you. You're not ready yet, but we want to nurture you as an artist, teach you how to songwrite, do all the things. And I was like, cool, sounds like fun. Like, I'm 15.
This dare is awesome.
Right? I'm 15, thinking the gateway to success and happiness is through fame and money. So
Yeah.
I'm like, sign me up. Like,
Yeah.
that sounds awesome. And so I get this really early taste of fame and celebrity, and I'm developing with Rodney for a couple years, and that turns into getting a deal with Murder Inc. and Ja Rule, and working under them, going on tour with them for 2.5 years, opening up for them, being on a couple, multi-platinum albums, and
Yeah.
being a featured artist, and working on my own music and all the things. And within that, I recognize, because I had this meta work of personal development, I recognized at multiple points, but I didn't have the courage yet to say it. But at multiple points, I was like, this is not for me.
Mm.
Like, I actually don't want to do this.
Yeah.
But I just said yes because it sounded like fun, and why not? And I thought, again, that was the gateway to happiness. But I recognized quite quickly that having the privilege of being able to see behind the curtain that most people don't get to see. I met a lot of celebrities who had a lot of money, a lot of fame, a lot of significance, and were very unhappy, addicted to drugs, addicted to sex, cheating on their partners. Like, I mean, I saw it all the things, like the worst of the worst.
Yeah.
And so I saw enough of that, enough times where I was like, this is not my life. And I
Mm.
remember having that moment where we were in South Africa on tour with the Inc. And we're on the tour bus, and I'm journaling, and I'm just like, and I had seen like people get stabbed, like knife fights. And it was the time during like the 50 Cent Ja Rule stuff. Like we were in a club in Miami, and like gunshots went off. And I mean, it was
Mm.
crazy.
Yeah.
I'm like a kid.
Yeah.
I'm like 18, like, what's happening right now?
Yeah.
But I had security and all the things, but it was just crazy. I'm like, this is not my life. Like I couldn't see the trajectory of my life being this. And I didn't quite know how to get out of it with integrity at the time. So I just kind of like, I changed my phone number. Like I just kind of ghosted and like
Mm.
disappeared because it got really hectic. It got really crazy. That's like when the FBI started investigating Murder Inc. for like tax evasion, all these things. It was just got crazy.
Yeah.
And I was dating someone at the time who was like, hey, you need to get out. Like it's getting a little intense. And so I did. And I honestly was kind of aimless for a while.
Yeah.
And I had a sexual assault that happened within like my final 3 months of being in the music industry
Yeah.
with someone in the music industry. And I was like, I fucking am done. Like, I
Yeah.
can't. And so I just went to like bartending, waitressing, like hustling to try and make money to keep up my life in New York City that I had. And I recognized that like the work was always with me. And at that point, I went more spiritual and was like,
Mm.
okay, now I need like connection with source and like something deeper. And it can't just be about money. And that's when I started my nonprofit organization because I was just like, there's got to be more to life
Mm.
than like this vapid, superficial gain.
Yeah.
And that's when I started Epic with my friend. And we're doing work overseas in Africa and just really getting like, wow, there's so much magic and so much depth to life. Like, I want my life to mean something. I don't want to just
Mm.
make money. Like,
Mm.
I want it to mean something. And so I was still like doing the bartending thing and I got back into modeling and television, which I'd done when I was younger and was making great money doing it. Realizing like, okay, this is how, if I make enough money, then I can come and serve people in
Yeah.
Tanzania and like do what I'm doing with my nonprofit. So the more money I make, the more service I can do. I never thought, because at that time it was like now coaching's like a thing, right? Like everyone can be a coach. At that time, it was like Tony Robbins. Tony Robbins was like the guy,
Yeah.
right? And there wasn't really anybody else. And it was you had to be an author, you had to be a speaker. Like there was a very like laid out path, and it wasn't necessarily coaching.
Mm.
But one day I'm sitting in the makeup chair for a show that I was on, and it's, it happened every day I was on set where I'm talking to the makeup artist or the hairstylist and I'm basically coaching them. And I'm like, and they're like, wow, you're really good at this. You should be a psychologist. You should be this. Da, 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 da. I'm like, I just love this work. And I'm like, you should read this book and you should pick up this. And it clicked for me like, I wonder if there's a way I could do this. So I start looking up psychology degrees and I'm like, maybe I'll go to school and get like my master's in psychology. And I found NYU was doing a life coaching certification.
Mm.
And I was like, life coaching? Yeah. And I like looked up the description. I'm like, that sounds like what I want to do. And I'm like, yes. And at the time I had been speaking on stages for my nonprofit work and like talking to people about how they can make a difference in their communities. So the speaking was already there. I had already co-written a book with my mom at, 19 years old about making your dreams come true and doing crazy things like traveling the world and all of that with Murder Inc. But I had never put it together of like, oh, I can actually do this. And so at 26, that's when I was like, okay, like I got certified in life coaching. I'm like, I'm doing this. I'm building this business. I wrote my first book. I did all these different things where I was speaking on stages. I was getting invited to all my friends, like big, like hedge fund things and talking about vulnerability. I was like working with women who had sexual assault, sexual trauma, and like talking to them about how to heal that because I had to learn how to heal my own. And I'm like, this is it. Like, this is the jam for me. I love this stuff so much. I'm obsessed with it. I want to know everything about it. And I didn't even care if I made money, to be honest. I was like, I just love this so much, And then I started, like, YouTube was coming out at that time, and I had a production company, and I was traveling, doing these travel videos, and I'm like, oh, what if I made personal development videos in really cool locations around the world?
That's how I found you, by the way.
Yes. And this is how a lot of people found me. I was
Yeah.
like, what if I combine all my superpowers from television hosting to producing to editing videos? Like, I had a production company as well. And it's like, I know how to do this stuff. I can location scout. I can talk to like the heads of tourism. I can get stuff paid for. Like, I can do this. And then those videos started. I edited them, pushed them out, and boom, that started a whole world of my book getting picked up for major publishing, of like all sorts of things. And so it's really, again, coming back full circle to this muse, right? Like when the muse is alive, it's a portal. It is a wave of aliveness that cannot be stopped. And the muse was so alive at that point in my life where it's like, I don't care how it happens. I don't care how much money I make. Like, I am such a yes to this. Like, I have goosebumps.
Mm,
I'm just such a yes to this because this is it for me. Like, this,
mm,
I'm like, and it was it for that time.
yeah.
Right. Like the first decade of my work was, again, very masculine focused and like goals and leadership and success and motivation. And that's where I was at. So that's where I could teach from. And then I hit a point where it's like, there's more.
Mm,
And now the muse is dancing in a different way. And I'm just saying yes,
mm.
you know?
It's so like, and like, I've known this story for a long time, but even just hearing it again, it's like it's so refreshing every time because it's like what we deem as success isn't it?
Totally.
Like, and I think when I first even got into the coaching industry myself, like I remember standing in the bridge room with you guys and you're like, I think you said something like, if you were to really scream what's on your heart's desire, could you let it out here?
Yeah.
And I remember standing there screaming, I just want to be a successful coach.
Yeah.
Having no idea what that actually meant.
Right. Right.
Having no idea what it actually would take to hold
Right.
that place.
Right.
Yeah. And so like
Huge.
I love the journey though, because it's such a testament to who you are and how you show up because you can take people through literally, I've seen you hold some crazy spaces.
Yeah.
Like, I've now traveled the world with you
Right.
in your practices and
Yeah.
in your, seminars, the bridge, and
Yeah.
you're also training us to also help facilitate that.
Right.
And, it's one of those things when you start to look at like what it really takes to hold that level of being able to listen to your body.
That.
Like,
And attuning to somebody else's body,
yeah.
knowing that there's a whole world. That's a whole world. Everybody's body is a whole world. And if we just listen to what their mouths are saying, it's like we're getting like 2% of the story.
Yeah.
And that's why I love somatic and embodiment work so much, because you just look at someone's body and you're like, okay, it's a puzzle. Like, where are you closed? Where are you open? What's in the way of the heart?
Yeah.
Like, how can we open that? How can we relax the nervous system enough and the muscular structure enough to get some movement of flow and energy going so that we can wake up the heart and like say, come back alive. Like, what's here? What needs to be shared? And so many of us, self included, we are entrained from a young age to stuff our emotions down, to not feel them, to not express our fullness, to not be wild, to not be, big, because big is bad.
Yeah.
Feeling is bad.
Yeah.
Full is bad, especially as a woman. And so I think that's what I love is specifically about the female piece on this is like liberating women. There's a certain magic in that because I think women, we have forgotten how fucking dope we are and how powerful we are. And like how like we are literally the bearers of life, the creators of life. Like we create life. I posted for International Women's Day, which just passed. Fun fact about women on International Women's Day. You all came from one.
Yeah, I've seen that. I was like, boom.
Like, enough said, mic drop moment. Like, how do we forget as women that we are the bearers and the creators of life, and yet we question ourselves. We doubt ourselves. We put our worth in our looks, our body, our bank account. Like, are we insane?
Yeah.
Like, we create life. Full stop, period. That's all you need to know, And even if you are someone who, let's say, can't have a physical baby, you have a womb space. That womb space is a creator space.
Yeah.
That is the void that can connect to spirit, divine, God.
Yeah.
And we receive those messages. It's why we're so deeply attuned to intuition if we're attuned to the body. I think we all have it.
Yeah.
I just think most of us are deeply disconnected from our bodies.
Something you said the other day, and like I've always said whispers and like follow the nudge and those sorts of things, but I loved how you, when we were in our teacher training for the Muse, you had shared like the difference between intuition and actually like full aliveness, the Muse, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
I'd love for you to explain that again because a lot of people, they're like, they think intuition is just it.
Yeah.
Can you please elaborate?
I can.
You know exactly where I'm going with this.
Yeah. So intuition for me, and this is again I've been working with cultivating a deeper practice with my intuition, having had intuitive hits since I was young, and then kind of like suppressing them and being like, oh, this is weird. What is this? And now coming back as an adult, going, oh, this is valuable. So what I've recognized for me is intuition is like the red flag. Like, hey, look over here. there's something over here. There's something over here. So you get that hit and you're like, I feel something, like reach out to that person, do this, go that way. It's not that business, it's this one. It's like, what about this idea? All those little like hits from intuition are like a giant red flag, a good red flag, not a bad one. Let's call it a green one. Giant green flag, like, hey, this direction.
Yeah.
It may not be this thing, but this direction is towards the thing that's the thing.
Yeah.
And that's the piece that for me, I've recognized is I don't get so caught up and holding on to like, oh, my intuition said it's this and it's got to be this idea. So let me burn my entire business down, right? Which I've done in the past.
We've talked about me doing it recently.
Totally. But it's not necessarily that.
Yeah.
It's saying, hey, I'm an indicator for something down this path that is about to rock your fucking world.
Yeah.
If you listen, if you come over here and check it out, it may not be that this is the thing, but it might be a doorway that opens up to a whole world that I didn't even know existed.
Yeah.
But it's that thing of like, I'm going to get real deep for a second.
Do it.
I'm going to get a little woo, but it's scientific and proven. So we are majority water, right? We know that. Molecular structure, water. Water has a consciousness. And if you want to follow any of Veda Austin's work, it's phenomenal. It has a consciousness. We've seen like the pictures when you talk to water in a pleasant way, it's like this beautiful crystalline structure. If you talk to it in a negative way, it looks like it's diseased and distorted. Water has a consciousness. And now, in fact, they are proving that water can take snapshots of our consciousness and we can actually see it if we get it in this plasma state of freezing for about 5 minutes.
Wow.
It's girl. So I'm working on a whole like art exhibition around water where I'm co-creating with water because it's amazing. But water, so for instance, like I could take this thing, right? And I could put a thing of water next to it or on top of it, like a petri dish of water. And then I'd put that water in the freezer for 5 minutes. I take it out, and in that in-between state, it will reproduce an image of this or an image of what's here in the field of consciousness.
Oh my God, that's mind-blowing.
Fucking mind-blowing. So if my consciousness is going ugly plant, and I'm looking at this like, oh, this is an ugly plant, but let's fucking try this, right? Water is going to go ugly plant and show me ugly plant because that's the consciousness. My energy is talking to the energy of the other water. And so water communicates with itself. We are water. So intuition is literally receiving messages in the water of our being and tuning in to that field of like, oh, I feel that. I can feel the consciousness of something in the waters of my being. Girl, I know, it's so deep.
Hold on, I want to take this to a whole nother level, okay? Like, yes, because like even I was talking about this with my clients last night about how so many people get hooked up on money.
Yeah.
And I'm like, when you think about the consciousness of money, it's all been built around water as well.
Totally. Yes.
Right? Like currency, reserves,
yes, girl, yes.
banks, all of that are water water language.
Yes. Well, and I think my take on money, since we're there, is money is inherently feminine.
Yeah.
Right. And the reason why most people are terrible with money is because they don't have their own sense of internal masculine containment and safety. And that's what money yearns for. The feminine yearns for containment.
Yeah.
And if we cannot contain ourselves first, and I am safe, I am whole, I need nothing exterior outside of me to make me feel whole, internal containment, then money goes, oh, yes, I can flow to you. Oh, I can express through you. Oh, I'm attracted to you because containment.
Yeah.
And that's why people are going, if I get money, then I can feel whole. And they're making money masculine.
Yeah, right.
They're waiting for the money to contain them.
It's funny because over the years I've heard masculine, I've heard feminine, I've heard all this. And I'm like, I personally hold the belief, and I love what you've said because I feel like it's shifted a lot now, but it's like I've always had it's neutral. It's how you hold yourself. And so it's kind of the same, just said differently. It's like you have to be able to be available for it.
Totally.
And
totally.
It's not going to sit there and wait for permission.
And it's certainly not going to come to somebody that's like, I need you.
Yeah.
I need you so bad, right? Like,
imagine being in a relationship with that.
Oh my God. You'd be like, run. And so, but that's how most people relate to money. It's this grasping, this holding, this I must, you must, you're going to change my life. And once I get you, and nobody wants to be in a relationship with that.
Yeah.
And so if we think of money as consciousness, as energy, as flow, as currency, it does not want to move into a space that has this rigid, tense, tight energy of like, I'm deficient and therefore you need to fill me up. Money wants to go where there's already fullness because it's a match for that. Money is fullness.
I love that so much. And even like over the years, I've shared so many wins with you where it's like completely separate from business. But I've been like, hey, I just had 300,000 pop in my account. Hey, I had this, like just random things. And that's like every time we've gone deeper with something, that's happened.
100%. Because you're more full.
Yeah, it's crazy. Like people don't believe in this stuff until it works.
Right. Even me. I'm like, oh shit. Like Em and I, who I know is on your podcast, my business partner, we were having a moment just yesterday at my house where like so much is happening. Like stuff is just pouring into our space. And it's like, this is the result of fullness.
Yeah.
Like this is the result. Like we don't have to work for it. It's just, oh, hi, there you are.
Yeah.
Let me meet you.
Do you know what I love so much about this as well? Like yesterday when we were at the event, like you were meant to be there.
Yeah.
And you were just like, I'm not coming because I just don't have the space or the energy. And I thought to myself, I'm like, if that were like, now I get it. Like I'm starting to get it and I'm really honoring those spaces for myself.
Yeah.
But even a year ago, I would have been like, I have to be there.
Right.
I've got to see my face, like all the things. Like, so I've got to be in the spotlight. I was just like, she really commands the space. Like at every move, it's just like, I don't have to do anything that's not fully aligned for me.
And like, what a fucking breakthrough. Because that would have been so challenging for me even 3 years ago of like feeling, oh, I have to show up. I have to do this. And it's like, I don't have to do anything. I'm only in negotiation with myself. And if I have to renegotiate some commitments, I can do that.
Yeah.
And I can do that in integrity with an open heart. Yeah. But I don't have to self-sacrifice in order to try and please somebody else. And that's been a huge part of my awakening, is like seeing how my pleaser played out in all these little insidious ways. And I was just betraying myself in every single interaction with it.
Yeah, it's funny actually. I even shared with you at the Muse, like the retreat we did recently. Well, I did, that was yours. But like, you know, I'd had this moment where everyone thinks I'm walking around being like, yes, 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 yes. Yeah. And it dropped in for me. It was like, I was a yes as long as my partner said so. Like, it was like waiting for him to be like, yeah, go babe.
Yes.
And like, and then if it wasn't him, it was whoever was next in line.
Oh, nice.
And it was like, it was such a big awareness piece for me.
Yeah.
And like, even just that shift since I've come home of just like, you know, and I got it prior. Like I was always like, I'm never going to wait for permission.
Right. To say that, we understand. We're like, of course, why would I wait?
I'm not fucking waiting for permission. Like anyone who would have looked at me is like, that bitch don't wait for permission.
Right. She goes.
Yeah. I was like, but my body actually was.
Yes.
Like it really was. It was like, oh, let's not move. Let's not do the thing. Yeah. And like, even just seeing it now, like I'm calling myself out because the physical feeling of knowing when that's up is so available now.
Oh, and that's the piece, right? Because I think it's one thing to know ourselves and to really understand ourselves, but it's another thing to experience the knowing of ourselves. And that's like such a big, like mic drop, pin drop moment in the body where you're like, oh, I feel it now. I get it. And it's not that we didn't get it before. We got it conceptually, but we didn't feel how our own body was actually showing up in the face of what we want, in the face of moving towards a dream, in the face of intimacy. And that's why embodiment work is so critical, because I can know all day all the tools.
Yeah.
But if my body closes in the face of intimacy, good luck solving something with my partner, you know? Or if my body closes in the face of opportunity or like this level up, good luck leveling up and growing in your career.
Yeah.
And that's why we find like terms like self-sabotage. It's just your body's pattern.
Yeah.
And you can get out of that pattern.
Yeah. It's honestly trying to keep you safe from what it thinks is danger. And like, I think that's been my biggest thing with like working with you guys for so long. It's like, you know my patterns so well.
Totally.
Like even like a couple of weeks ago, you're like, there's something across the chest that's not landing for me.
Yeah.
And I was like, I could feel it too, but I didn't know how to access it. Yeah. And then once we did, you're like, there it is.
Yeah. Okay, got it.
You know, like, and I think people think you get to a certain level and then it's done.
No.
You know, and I think that's been the biggest permission slip with working with you guys for so long. It's like, I watch you keep leaning in, like keep going, okay, again. Again. And that's been like the bit where I get to go back and be like, oh, again. It's like, how can I play with them more? Like, I remember years ago, Abane, we were like maybe together for like 6, 8 months at the time. We'd just fallen pregnant and I was like hustle mode hard.
Right.
Like I was like, I've got a baby, I've got to provide. Like I was in it.
Yeah.
And it was right after I just finished like going really deep with Kaboom and I started working with Preston and I was like trying to hold everything. And I remember Urbane looked at me one time and he was like, when will it be enough? Like he just lost it.
Yeah.
And at the time I was like, I literally looked at him. I'm like, do you know who you're fucking with
Right.
right now? And he's like, you are so in your masculine. Like that was his words to me. And
Right.
I was just like, yeah, well, someone's got to be.
Right,
Like, and I
right.
was so like at him
Yeah.
because he couldn't get it.
Yeah.
But what I realized, like about 2 years later, he was listening to a podcast, a book from like Grant Cardone, and he was talking about how those who shut down people's dreams, like they're also blocking their own. Like don't
Totally.
ever dismiss someone's more.
Yeah.
And then a couple of years later, again, we were in one of the immersions with you guys. I
Yeah.
can't remember where it was, but I remember you talking about the more and being available for the more because that's your feminine. Like, and I'm
Yeah.
like, oh.
Yeah. That's okay.
Yeah, like Urbane had apologized to me years ago in that moment when he caught it. He was
Yeah.
like, I'm really sorry that I shut that down on you.
Yeah.
But I still lived it in my body.
Yeah.
Even though I had the access point of him being like, yes,
Yeah.
I was still like, oh, I can't ask for
Right.
right? And then when you said it that day, it was like every time there's a more, that's just your creation coming online.
Yeah.
There's just and so now I'm like, where can I play with the more?
That.
Like,
It's so good.
yeah.
And I want to make this distinction because I think some people might hear this and be like, oh, great. Like my hunger for more and more and more and more. But there's a distinction.
Yeah.
More from fullness,
Yeah.
more from scarcity.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right?
The scarcity will burn you out.
Fucking exhausted. Like you've got a runway of about maybe 3 years of that, and then you're done. Your body's like, I can't
Yeah.
anymore.
Yeah.
And like do that because sometimes we need to do that to feel that, to learn that, to have that experience. Like I did. I know I have to learn the hard way sometimes. But there's a more from fullness when you are fully activated in that aliveness, that wave, that eros of like, whoo, here I am. There is going to be more because in that fullness, you are the same fullness of the universe, which is always expanding, infinitely expanding and going more. The same fullness of a tree in nature going, grow bigger, more fruit, more shade, more light, more everything, more leaves. Everything is always moving. And so the minute we try and say, oh, once I get here, then I'm done, that's death.
Yeah.
Right? But the problem is most of us set a goal and the goal is noble and it's exciting. And sometimes we need that to get out of bed in the morning, but we don't realize that that's just a signpost on the way to the next one and the next one and the next one and the next one. And if we fall in love with that journey, instead of punishing ourselves, we're like, more?
Yeah.
Gotta be done. It's like, well, once you stop, aliveness stops. Once aliveness stops, death starts to happen in the body. And we see that. Like, I think the stat is crazy. Like, I think it's like 60% of people that retire within 5 years, they die.
Wow. I
Yeah.
didn't know that.
Because
They're not
they have no sense of aliveness and movement and purpose unless they get a dog or unless they're like spending time with their grandkids. But people who just stop, it's like they miss that juice of life. Like we are meant to grow. We are meant to expand towards the light. We are meant for more, but more from fullness, not more from deficit.
Yeah. And it's so like such a beautiful piece that you're saying there. Cause I had a conversation with a client just yesterday and she was like, you know, should I be like right now I'm on holidays, I'm traveling the world and I really want to be in this and I also want to post, should I just be waiting and integrating all this? I'm like, no.
Yeah.
I was like, now it's alive, you get to move with it. Like there's such a difference between like, because one thing I've seen a lot of the time is like people, they start to, they know the burnout.
Yeah.
Then they start to experience the aliveness.
Yeah.
And then they get fearful of the burnout.
Totally.
So when the aliveness is on, they go, oh, I can't do that because I don't want to go back here.
Right.
What would you say to the woman in that? Because that's a lot of my clientele.
Yeah.
They're like, oh, I've hustled. Now I want to feel good, but I don't want to go back to who I was.
It's such a key piece and it's come up for me too. So I just want to normalize that. Like when we have that burnout in our history, we're like, I'm never going back there.
Yeah.
You know, I need to go slow and take my time and blah, blah, blah. But the aliveness from fullness, again, from fullness, meaning we feel fully whole and complete. We don't need what's attached to the aliveness to feel good about ourselves or worthy or recognized or successful. Like we already feel that because we're full. We're taking care of ourselves. We're honoring that magnetism and aliveness within us. And then we're like, oh, this And it feels so fun. And it feels like this crystallized idea that wants to come in through you.
Mm.
When we say yes to that, that aliveness is the energy that's needed to make that thing happen. And that's what I think we miss is when we're building more from deficit, we actually don't have the energy of the aliveness to move that thing forward.
Yeah.
So we're having to conjure it up. We're waking up and we're like, coffee. Like,
I love a coffee.
what do I
but,
need to
like-
get through this day? And then at 2:00, we're like exhausted and wiped because we're pushing.
Yeah.
And so that's when, you know, Em and I in our work, we talk about the woman who's pushing. That's what we mean. She's pushing from an empty cup and she's like, I got to find water from somewhere to put in this cup so I can push it out in the world versus the woman who's full and really like in devotion to herself and her aliveness. That's a full cup. And it's like, oh yeah, I got water. Oh, and aliveness is here. Oh, I got more water because now I'm tapped into the waters of infinite source and there's infinite aliveness. So for instance, like Em and I were on like just a push in terms of what could have been for Muse. Like we had just come out of Bridge and Extreme and Apprenticeship, Preston and I. Then I had 2 birthday parties back to back. Then I had a trip to Orlando. Then I had the flu in my house where like 4 of my kids got sick.
Sorry about that. I know my son gave it to your kid.
Thanks to Casey. And this is all in a month. And then we're prepping for an event. Our Embody event, 3-day event at our house. So we're like setting up the space and like ordering all the things and getting catering and blah, blah, blah. And we're setting up for mastery, teachers training on the front and back end of that event. It was nonstop. February, I don't think I fucking stopped, right? Like at all. And there was a moment when I said to Em's like, you know, we have to make sure like we don't get stressed out about this. I was like, girl, I'm looking at this as like the Muse is she is feeding this. She's feeding this whole thing. Like, I got you, girl. I got you. And I literally reframed it that way because it was intense. Like it was intense and my body felt it. But I had to shift the way I was relating to it of like, she's bringing everything I need for this. And I'm just trusting that whatever energy she's bringing is exactly what I need. And I need nothing else. I don't need to pour. I don't need to pour from an empty cup. I can literally take what she's bringing and just go, yes, yes.
And I think that was such a testimony too, because also like having been in student seat with you through that whole experience, we felt that too, as in like we needed what you needed. And so like that last day, we were all so soft and gooey and it was just perfect. Like
so good.
It was so good because it wasn't like, you know, most people who are like, I've got a facilitator training, I've got to be up. Like you taught from what was there and what was alive. And it was so like, that's what's missing in the embodiment piece. And like even in my work with embodied business, like I always say we speak to the woman first. Like I'm not even going to touch strategy.
I love
I see
that.
so many people who are like strategy, but like, and especially through the work with you and like having you hold that for me for so long. I know if I'm not connected to my body and my feminine, I can't even create anything. Like,
no, and what you'll create will be something that won't be aligned. And then you'll be like, this is the best strategy, maybe for someone that it's aligned for. But it likely won't work to the extent that you hope it will if it's 100%. Out of alignment.
And even I remember Preston saying one day to me, because I was like, I was at a bit of I was like, something's missing from it. Like, I don't know what it is, but I feel like I'm giving so much. And I also don't feel like they're feeling what I'm giving. So there's creating this dissonance. And he's like, it's because there's a part of it that you built from scarcity. And so I had to reshape everything. Like I was like, oh, like luckily I was like in the process of about to relaunch. Like, this was like almost over a year ago now. He said that to me. So over the last 12 months, it has just gone boom, 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 boom. Like I put like $120,000 into the remodel of what it is. Because I've just felt that. You know?
And that's the piece that I think a lot of people, you know, we talk about freedom funnels and all this stuff. And yes, but businesses are what I would consider like its own entity.
100%.
Right? Like a baby.
It comes through you.
Like a baby. And we're moms. So like imagine putting Tiadiki or like one of my children in this little box at 3 years old, like Tiadiki or Cash, right? And it's like, this is who you're going to be forever. And they're like, I'm in my three-nager stage right now. I'm about to fuck shit up. Like, I hope I grow out of this, right? And like, that's our business too. Like our business has stage 1.
Yeah.
0 to 1.
Yeah.
It's in its infancy. It needs a lot of attention, a lot of nurturing, a lot of breast milk, a lot of like, we're like, oh, I'm so tired.
Yeah.
But that's what it requires in that first phase. The second phase of like, okay, now they've got some legs, they're moving around the house. Like things are challenging, but in a new way, right? Because
Yeah.
now they might kill themselves. So,
Yeah.
so then there's that. And then there's this natural evolution of our businesses, and we try to stagnate our business and stick it in this box and go, stay there forever. Meanwhile, we're growing, we're changing, we're evolving. It doesn't necessarily mean the product has to shift, but like shifting the messaging or shifting like how you're speaking to the woman who's interfacing and considering this. And it is a dance.
Yeah.
It is a dance, and the frameworks can still be potent and perfect, but how you invite people into those frameworks might need to shift and grow.
100%. Like I always say, like boring business is good business if you're alive in it.
That.
Like, you know, and I used to say it without the if you're alive
Yeah.
in it. Like, but the more that I've worked in that, it's like, you know, we look at people who are like a manifesting generator or a manifestor. You're a manifestor. aren't you?
Manifestor,
Yeah, of course you are. But it's like, if there's no lit up factor there,
Right.
it's just a
Right.
no.
Right.
Hard
It's
no.
a no.
Yeah.
Hard no.
Yeah.
Yeah. And energetically, like the world feels that.
Yeah.
So you could get on as many Instagram lives and stories and ads as you want, and good luck.
Yeah.
Because the frequency is nope.
Yeah. Yeah. It's so interesting though, because especially with people who like, you know, they've been in the work for so long. Like I remember my first couple years, I'd sort of like, I was like, good. And then something hit where I was like, this is where it goes.
Yeah.
And when I fully got that, this is where it goes,
Yeah.
it just got really easy.
Yes.
But most people aren't willing to sit and listen for that.
Most people give up before they get there.
Yeah.
I would go as far as to say they came into, let's say, the coaching or the expert space or the online business space, even like product, you know, I have a lot of friends in the product-based business, clothing lines, things like that. And they're expecting the quick windfall that everybody talks about online. You know,
Yeah.
like, I made $50,000 this weekend. And they're like, I want to make $50,000 this weekend. How do I do that? And so they get in again from deficit, from scarcity. I need to make $50,000. So let me do this thing that person did.
Yeah.
Not aligned for me. I never asked myself if it's aligned for me. I just said, they did it. I can do it too.
Yeah.
Which isn't bad.
Yeah.
But it's not yours. And I think that's the big piece is like finding what's yours, finding what makes you come online, makes you come alive, makes you so excited you can't stop thinking about it at night where you're like, I have to research this and look at that. And that is aliveness.
100%.
And if you follow that, life will bless you because it's a wave of energy. And if we're in the fullness of that wave and saying yes to that wave, life can meet us there in a frequency.
Yeah.
And it's going to meet you in fullness, not from deficit and scarcity. And it's such a simple concept, but you don't get it until it lands in your body and you're like, oh shit. Like I can feel it now. I can feel myself. And I think that's a part of the beauty of like Embody, our 3-day event, is women get to feel that wave in their fullness. They're like, holy good God, there I am. Like, I have never felt this before. And like, I just got goosebumps.
Yeah.
I hit the mic at the same time. That's how much it's alive.
Yeah.
Right? You feel it and you're like, I've never known this full.
Yeah, you had a moment, I had a moment where like I had done like a solo thing and you were like, what happened for you there? And I was like, a part of me that I thought I had lost just come back, but it came back so differently.
Right.
Like, and yeah, it's so beautiful when you experience that. And I think, you know, I teach people how to build masterminds and like that's my magic. But when I see someone who takes exactly how I teach it, they don't get the yummy.
Totally.
It's like you can have that.
Yeah.
However, my thing is like take it and make it yours.
That.
Take it and add the thing in it that lights you up, that makes you feel like, oh, yes. And that's where I think a lot of people get caught because they're like, well, she did it this way. It worked for her. I got to do it that way.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And there's an interesting thing. I'm working on this framework that I think will eventually be a book. But there is stages, I think, of our womanhood. And I think the first stage is really about mirroring. Right. It's like we don't fully know who we are yet. So we're mirroring and looking out and going like, okay, who is she? Oh, I like her. I like what she's built. Like maybe I need to be like her because I don't know myself, because I'm not fully sovereign yet. And in my autonomous self, like, oh, here I am, Alexi. I know what I want. I know what I desire. I know what I don't want. And so I move from that space. But a woman who doesn't know that, which was me for a long time, most women for a long time, we mirror. And we start to
Yeah.
go like, whose life do I want? Who looks like they're having fun?
Yeah, well, that's why I hired you. I was like, she's got everything that I desire.
Right.
So, of course, like, and especially because the reason why I stayed with you the most was because you also had a child in it.
Right. Totally. Which
Like
is a whole different
King was
ballgame.
very young when I first came into your world, but that was like a big piece for me because a lot of people lose that bit when they have children.
Totally. Or they don't know how to manage relationship when children comes in and business. And then like we have 4 kids and like that's a whole different ballgame. Like
Your house is wild.
all that wild. Like twins in the mix. Like it's fucking crazy.
Yeah.
2 dogs. But that's the piece. And I don't think mirroring's bad. I think it's necessary. I think it's the thing, like speaking back to the intuition, it's the flag. Of like, hey, start here.
Yeah.
And so we go to where we can mirror. Like I mirrored Tony. Tony Robbins is my first mirror. Where I looked at him and I was like, he's the only person I see doing what I'd like to do. Like he's supporting people all over the world. He's got books. He's speaking on stages. Like that's how it must look. And so I mirrored his career and I mirrored his, even like a lot of his frameworks, and I studied with people he studied with and I learned all the things he learned, and it got me to where I needed to be to go next. And now I've gone to places he hasn't gone. I've studied things that he hasn't studied, and he studied things I haven't studied too. But like I have forged my own path, but I needed to start there because that's where I was at.
100%.
And I think mirroring is the first step. If you're not quite sure who you are yet, find someone who you feel is most alive, not necessarily most successful, because smoke and mirrors on Instagram is real. It's fucking real.
It's so real.
I saw a post from someone the other day that was like, I'm leading a free workshop on how I called in hundreds of thousands of dollars in investments. And like, we all know, like she married into money. Like, I'm like, you were broke and then you married into money. And then that dude put you in front of all his rich friends and gave you funding.
Yeah.
Like, are you going to say that on the webinar, or are you going to say something else? Because, like,
it's crazy.
we know the real.
Yeah.
It's an interesting thing that.
But it's like, that's okay as long as you share that bit too.
And that's okay. Like, just own it. And I think that's the thing. We're in a world of pretend. Where it's like, who do I need to be in order for you to think I'm impressive and worthy of love and worthy of you spending money with me and all the things?
I think it's impressive that she's called a guy in that can do that for her.
That to me is the most impressive thing. Like, who did you have to be to call in somebody who you would be that valuable of an asset for someone who has it all? And she is. She's a beautiful woman. She's like expressed in her feminine juiciness. Like that to me is the story.
Yeah, 100%.
Like you're an alive woman. That's why.
Yeah.
It's not because of strategy. It's because of your heart and your gooiness and your openness. Like talk about that.
Yeah.
And so that is the piece. And I think if you're in that mirroring stage, you're not quite sure who you are. You're not quite sure like, what is my deepest alignment? What is my aliveness? I'm not sure yet. Find someone that you're like, that person is fucking alive. Like they are on fire. They feel lit up. They feel on purpose. Your body will know. There might be someone who's like really impressive and like ticks all the boxes, but something's a little off and you're not sure why.
Yeah.
Don't mirror that person because that person probably is still mirroring someone else and sharing those mirrored strategies.
Yes.
So like if you want to get a little ahead on the mirroring journey, start with someone and mirror aliveness because that'll catapult you in the right direction.
Yeah. What's the next bit? I'm curious.
You'll have to buy the book.
Okay, I'll buy the book. You know I'll buy the book anyway.
But it's basically these 4 stages that I'm sitting with, and I'm still kind of crystallizing a bit because they're sub-stages.
Yeah.
And so what I'm playing with my theory in my book is that within each stage, no matter where we're at as a woman, what happens if you get pregnant and have a baby? What happens if you're in relationship? What happens if you hit like a rock bottom or a trauma within each phase?
Yeah.
How do you heal it? What's the way based on what's available for you in that stage?
I love that. I can't wait for that book. Just quietly.
Yeah, it's deep.
Because I feel like you've kind of done a lot of that with me. So I'm like so excited.
Yes.
So I really want to dive into as well, like around holding a powerful relationship with also accessing your own power.
Yeah.
Because I know like you've shared a lot with me personally, like as you've stepped into the Muse, P's also done a lot of work on himself as well. So that would have been challenging, like meeting each other again and choosing each other again.
Yes.
What's been your biggest lesson around that particular piece for yourself?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is I think I always had a story that like you both have to do the work at the same time, And well, I think that's true in some aspects, and I think it's nuanced.
Yeah.
What I've learned is if one person really fucking goes there
Yeah.
and like really activates their fullness and like really comes online and really is like in their truth with an open heart. And it isn't like the boundaried walled off version, but like the soft, gooey, open heart, like power version, true power,
Mm.
not force. It initiates a man.
Yes.
And if it doesn't initiate him, he will not fit in your life anymore.
Yeah.
And I think that was so big for me to recognize, because I think the wounded masculine in me that wanted to control everything is like, you need to be doing this and you need to be doing this. And like, I had a list of all the things he should have been doing while I was doing my stuff. But I recognized like when I dropped that and was like, I'm just going to trust that like whatever he's doing is perfect. And I'm just going to lean into my fullness. That has initiated him to meet me because he wants to meet me. And I'm going deep. I'm going deep. And he's like, okay, like I'm coming with you. Like not quite sure how yet, but I'm going to meet you there.
Yeah.
And so it really only takes one person if they're really truly in the work to initiate the other partner into that. It doesn't have to be both at the same time, but I think it's this like,
yeah. But I think that's where most women get hung up, right? Is because they're like, I'm doing it. He better meet me now.
right.
And like, I always say, and I don't know if you believe the same thing, but I believe the woman holds a spiritual container.
I do.
For a relationship.
Yeah. She's the compass.
Yeah, 100%.
I'm
and
with
like,
you.
even just like in this most recent up level that I've experienced in my relationship, I've like gone deeper with you and I've shared things and I'm like, there's things that I'm just not available for anymore.
Yep.
The minute I shared it from absolute truth as opposed to demand, correction,
Right.
you
You're
do
wrong.
this way, blah, blah, blah. He's like, okay, where do I get a mentor for that bit? What do I do here? Like, and he's come to me, he's like, oh, by the way, I'm about to drop 20 grand on this mentor. And I'm like, what? Like, and I noticed myself that wanted to be like overcorrect and like, oh, you don't have to do it that way. And then I was like, actually, no, just let him have the space.
Because that's his leadership.
Yeah.
Right. And like the leadership of our men, and again, this is a very nuanced conversation, but men want to lead.
Yeah.
They want to show up for us. They want to be our heroes. They want to make our worlds more beautiful. And women are highly capable of doing that for themselves.
Yeah.
And this is the hard piece is just because we can doesn't mean we have to in relationship.
Yeah.
We can do it in the world. We can do it in our work. We can do it with our kids. We can do it everywhere. But like the majority of women I speak to who are ambitious and like successful, they want to come home and just
100%.
like relax into their man's leadership. And yet we don't create the space for it because we're still trying to control and micromanage out of a fear that they'll drop us if we don't.
It's so interesting you say that as well. Like even this morning, Evain's about to go to a retreat with Carl Kingsbury.
Yes, yeah.
And like he doesn't have to be there till like 12 or something like that in the day. And I was like, oh, don't worry about anything. I'll get it all sorted once I get home. You just take the morning and just get into whatever space you need to be to fully receive. And he was like, no, I want to make sure the house is clean for you so you don't have to worry about it while I'm away. And I was just like, okay.
Like, what just happened?
I'm like, you don't have to. And he's like, no, I'll put a slow cooker on so you can just come home and you can just, and I was just like, yes, God, more please. Like this. But it's like, it's such a testimony. Like even thinking about prior to coming here and like you guys were like, hey, we want you to come over for a couple of months. Yeah. And I was like, oh, how's that going to happen? You're like, I got a house for you. I got this. I got that. It's like when you say yes to things, it just happens.
It just happens. And that was feeling really alive for you guys. Yeah. Like, you're like, we're not quite sure how this is going to work. But the minute you said yes, like everything that needed to happen in Australia happened. Everything that needed to happen here happened. It was just like, of course. Yeah. Here it is. Yeah. Doesn't mean there's not hurdles along the way, but it becomes a lot easier when we follow that wave.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. Okay, I want to take this in a bit of a different turn, more business focused, purely because the way that you lead in business is so powerful because you are listening to the muse. You are letting her lead the way. And the one thing that is really alive for a lot of my clients and also myself, so this is a personal curious question, is like when choosing collaboration, because I believe like conscious collaboration is necessary for growth. Yeah. How, like, because I know you and Emma have been friends for years. Yeah. But what was it that made you go, yeah, that's it. Yeah. That's where I'm going to really put my attention and my focus.
It's a great question. I think having collaborated with other people in the past on like smaller projects, again, following this aliveness. Yeah. Like I think I got an early lesson and it was pre-kids for sure. But I got an early lesson of like, Lex, you don't have to do it all. Like, it doesn't all have to be done through you. Like, this is just, you're the steward for the idea. And part of being a steward for something is you're collecting the right people and resources to actually bring this thing to life. And so when I actually got that, I'm like, oh, okay, it doesn't always have to be through me, about me, from me, by me. Alexi over here, superstar, this is my stuff.
Yeah.
I can initiate, because I'm a manifestor, I can bring in the vision and the idea and go, okay, what does this idea need to give it legs, to give it life, to, you know?
Yeah.
And M has just been someone, like, we work so well together. We have such great communication as friends. Like, we have navigated some hardship together really beautifully. And we're just always like, it's like life is like right place, right time with us, where it's
Yeah.
like we're in these same kind of bubbles usually together. And so our first business we created was a business coaching course. And we did that. I forget what it was called, but business coaching course. We did that. It was super successful. We did like 3 rounds of it. And then we're like, we're kind of bored at this, you know, like we don't really want to like coach business anymore. Like we know it, we can do it like the back of our hand, but like, it's not what's alive. That's when we created Ladies Lifestyle Club, which was right before COVID, but it was like the beginning of the Muse, where it's like, we want women to like feel more alive and have more fun. And it was surface level of what we're doing now. Right.
Yeah.
But we weren't there yet.
Yeah.
We weren't there yet in our journey. And so it was like we were riding this like, yeah, I think it's like successful, ambitious women who want more out of life and they want their life to feel good, but they haven't created space for it. Like, what if we created this membership portal where we do trips around the world? And still a really good idea, right?
Still available.
Yeah. we have a Muse. We have a Muse arm that's coming for trips.
Oh, okay.
Like Muse X Play, and it's like playing with your Muse.
Yeah, I'm so here for that.
So it's coming. Like it's circling back in its fullness, but it's also like deep embodiment and like, you know, it's like juicy trips.
Yeah.
And so anyways, Ladies Lifestyle Club, we like got the business, did all the things, the bank account, and then COVID happened, and this is an events-based business. So we're like, all right, well, let's follow the Muse. It's not the time, but that whole thing was there. And then we just kept following that nudge, and it turned into the work that we do now, which is completely different, but like same thread of women want to feel alive. They want to create space to come back home to themselves. They want to be in community with other women. They want to be seen. They want to be expressed. They want to feel on fire again. How do we get there? Well, we get there through the body. Okay. So now I'm going to combine somatics and our trainings in trauma and tantra and embodiment and nervous system and weave it all together and create this magical little world called the Muse. And it's, you know, it's like, it couldn't have happened any other way. So collaboration for me is thinking about like, who would be the best person to be by my side through this? Like, what does this thing need for some magic? And like, even Preston and I, like we collaborate with the bridge and so many other things. But the bridge is so magical because P and I are so different.
Yeah.
You know, we're so different. And P is this like magical unicorn that's like bing and pop, and like his energy is very like this. And I'm more here. And
I like to explain it as like, he's like, blah, 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 blah. And you're like, boom.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We hit it from different angles, and it's why it works really well.
Yeah.
Because I'm not trying to be Preston. He's not trying to be me. We're just being ourselves and our gifts. And I think that's the key point, is thinking about like what gifts are needed to bring this even more alive, to expand this out even further, and who has that gift innately.
Yeah.
Because if that person knows, hey, that's my gift, then they're not going to be in competition with your gift.
Yeah, 100%.
You know, and I think early on with P and I, we were in competition of like, oh, I got to be more like that. Well, I got to be more like that. And it worked, but there was a lot of, you know, struggle in the beginning of Bridge.
Yeah.
As facilitators and as co-owners.
Well, even Urbane and I are learning that as we're learning to facilitate together deeper. Like when we were doing like, you know, we've done embodiment stuff together and ran retreats together before, but because he was like, this is my bit and this is your bit, it was very different to how do we actually work together?
That. And it's a dance. And to me, like, again, coming down to like the molecular structure of it, it's energy weaving together and dancing together. And that's really what it is. It's like a human is a 3D structure, but it's energy. Yeah. Right. And if I can move with your wave of energy and be like, yes, okay, where's your wave going? Can I move with that? Yeah. Okay, now let's move it this way. Can you move with that? And it's a dance. It's a dance.
Yeah, well, last year, for example, not last year, the year before maybe, I can't remember what year it was, but we started this whole movement where it was like, we're going to bring all these women together and do all these things. Yeah. And all of us collectively felt when it dropped.
Ah,
And we allowed that to
yeah,
drop
yeah.
beautifully. And it maintained our friendships. It maintained
Yeah.
we didn't let it be like, we've got to hang on to this. We were
Yeah.
just we were like, what's alive with you? What's alive with you? What's alive?
So good.
And the beautiful piece about that was like, it was like, okay, cool. When it's ready to pick back up, we know it's there. Like, that's what I think feels the juiciest about it. It's like, it doesn't have to be something.
Okay, so going back, because it's great, right?
Yeah.
You're talking about making a decision from fullness versus a decision from scarcity. Because if that was your only business and that had to work,
Oh, yeah.
and you had to make money, y'all would have been moving out of alignment.
Yeah. 100%.
Right. And this is why it's so important that we learn to resource ourselves, not just with our nervous system and our bodies, but also financially. Like, make sure you're taking care of yourself, taking care of, maybe you don't need to live with all the things, but you live, you know, in the back house of somebody's house, and that's cheaper rent. Or you know, for a long time, I was sharing a bed with somebody in New York City. You know, it's my friend, but in a living room of somebody's 1-bedroom apartment.
Yeah.
Because my rent was $400.
But I don't think people are willing to actually look at what it takes sometimes to choose the aliveness.
Totally.
Like, you know, I often will say to my clients, I'm like, I don't believe in burning the boats.
Yeah. I don't either.
Like,
I don't either, girl.
That's one bit of Tony advice. I'm like, don't fucking do it.
Right. Do not burn your boat.
Yeah, because it's like, you actually need the safety in your nervous system 100%. To create the aliveness.
I'm with you on that.
Yeah.
I'm so with you. And people are like, if you burn the boats, there's no other option. It's like, yes, and if you don't know that you're resourced, you actually choose and create from survival.
Yeah, and it creates a whole shitstorm.
A whole shitstorm that may feel really good for the moment. You may make money. You may have really great feedback from others, but eventually you'll hit that point of like, oh, do I actually want this? Or is this all there is? Like, I got everything ticked the box. I fucking nailed it, but I feel empty inside, or I'm fucking exhausted, or I've lost my relationship, or my kids don't even know me. Like, is it worth it?
Well, it's interesting you say that, because as I mentioned before, Bain and I came in and we were like, we don't know if it was that bit that actually did it. Yeah. We were both trying to hold something. He was in a career that he fucking hated.
Yes. Yes.
And he was like, when we decided to come in with you, he was like, all right, I'm quitting that job.
So good.
And went into a completely different direction. And since he's quit that one again, because he realized that that was the green flag.
Yes, totally.
Like,
totally.
And sometimes you have to be willing to take that risk.
100%. And we're not willing a lot of times because we set ourselves up in this consumeristic society of like, if I have more stuff or a bigger car or a nicer car or a bigger house or a bigger apartment, then that must make me feel worthy and good. And so we keep stuffing ourselves with all this superficial stuff that doesn't actually fill the void. Yeah. And so like, I remind people all the time, and obviously speaking from the privilege of having all the nice things, but for years I didn't. Like, I slept in a bed with my friend in a living room of somebody's 1-bedroom apartment who traveled all the time for work. But I was willing to do that, to sacrifice in that way so that I could build and have my dream business. And not only did I not feel like my life was terrible, I loved my life at that time. Like, my life was so full and so alive. And same with Preston. When Preston and I first started, we weren't making a bunch of money. Like, we were pouring money into what we were doing and making like $10,000 a year off of it, working, hustling all these other jobs to pour in and to pay for production and to travel and to do all this stuff. But of course it was worth it. Yeah.
And I think too, in such a society where they're like, you could become a coach tomorrow and make 50K. It's like, actually, if you look at the people who are doing it, like, I know how much I've invested. I know how much you've invested. Like, you know, and I'm nowhere near where I desire to be. Like, you know, sure, I'm making some money, but it's like, there's still a bigger vision there.
Totally.
It's like having the humility to be like, okay, cool.
What's it going to take?
What's it going to take? Yeah.
Just like parenthood. Like, I think a lot of people want kids because they want to feel significant and important and feel like, you know, the love of a child and the oxytocin hit. And then they get hit with the reality of like, oh, I have to take care of this person.
Yeah.
And, like,
and they're a mini version of me.
And all their wounds are now staring me at the face. They're my wounds. But we forget about the responsibility of, you know, like, to get the rewards. There's a cost.
100%.
You know, and it's a cost that most of us are willing to pay because being a parent is so fulfilling. Yeah. I would say the same thing for career. If you want a fulfilling, magical, incredible, on purpose, alive life/career/relationship/ fill in the blank, there's a cost for that. Yeah. And it's going to take some effort. It's going to take sacrificing all the things that are no longer aligned for that life, that are maybe comfortable and easy and fun and distracting. in order to have what you want. And I do think most people are not willing to do that.
Yeah.
And that's the good news, because good news, ding, 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 most people are not willing to do that. So therefore, if you are, your chances of success are so high because most people are really lazy and they don't want to
100%.
change.
It's like, even like I shared earlier, like we've got this house that we've just come into now. Like, had I got that years ago, I would have been like stressed. How am I going to pay the rent? How am I
Totally.
even if I had the money there?
Yeah.
Whereas like now it's like, okay, cool. We've created that from the vision, not
Yes.
from the I need to look good.
Yes.
Because we're like,
So good.
we have purpose for every bit of that now.
Yeah.
And I think that's what a lot of people don't understand is like they want to look like the vision is here now as opposed to the vision pulling them forward.
Yes.
And like I see this with a lot of women who come into my world. They're like, I want to look like I'm luxurious and I'm powerful and I'm all this. And then you actually sit down with them and they're fucking struggling
Totally.
to uphold the image.
100%.
I'm like, that's not luxury.
That's a prison.
Yeah.
That's a fucking prison.
I've done that. That's not working.
But that's the thing, right?
Yeah.
Like I had the luxury of like breaking that veil in the music industry because I saw all these people who I thought like they must be so happy. They must have like all their shit together. They have the best clothes and the best cars and all the money and everybody loves them and all the things. But they were like desperately searching for something. And I was like, oh, if they don't, well then this must be a game. Like this must not be real. Like what game are we playing here? And I started asking those bigger philosophical questions because I saw, and even in my time in the music industry, I met some of the wealthiest people in the world who became my dear friends. And I'm talking like top 5 wealthiest people in the world. And like even seeing the struggles they had, like it humanized it for me. And I think it's so important that we humanize this idea of like someone's made it and therefore like they've got it all.
Yeah.
We're still fucking human. We're still messy. We still yearn. We still ache. We still desire for more. And it's not always pretty. And so no amount of money or success is going to make you feel any different than you feel right now.
Yeah. Well, we see this in the bridge rooms a lot of the time as well. I think I just want to really point this out. A lot of people have this idea that it's, just a spiritual woo-woo space. It is not.
No.
Like we have millionaires coming in being like, I am worth, like I remember one guy who was like, I've got $110 million net worth.
Yeah.
And he felt fucking broken.
Totally.
Like
he was like, what's the point?
He was like, I don't even know why I'm doing all this.
Yeah.
And then when you see them tap into it, because this isn't just for women.
No.
This is men as well.
Totally.
Like something happens. Like, they go out and they actually find purpose for, okay, now that I've got this, how do I get to share myself with the world?
Well, and that's the thing. Again, it's the privilege of having. I think a lot of people, they have the thing, like the money, or a lot of single women. Once I find my person, like we have this goal that we think once I get the goal, then everything's going to be fine. My anxiety is going to stop. I'm going to stop feeling scarcity. I'm going to feel so abundant and overflowing with life and aliveness and happiness. Then they get it. And then they recognize, oh shit, I'm still here. Same person.
And it's louder.
And now the voice is louder because I don't have the excuse of, oh, well, I don't feel that way because I don't have this. Now we have it. We're like, oh, I have it, but I still feel this way.
Yeah.
And that is the failure of success, as they call it, where you recognize like, oh, I thought it was this thing outside of me, but it's always been this thing inside of me. And if I don't work on that, if I don't come into terms with what's alive in here, it's never going to be enough out here.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
I think that's been my biggest journey with you guys. Like I've had like different people coach me on different spaces, but I've always stayed with you for that reason.
Yeah.
Because it's like, no matter what I learn from whatever else, it's like, I need someone who sees that it's so important.
It's so big.
Yeah.
And I think that is the piece that I think the world is kind of having a collective wake up to right now, especially in our community where a lot of people have gotten the thing.
Yeah.
And now they're like, wait. And again, that's the masculine hero's journey is like, go outside into the world and conquer.
Yeah.
Attain. Yeah. Get. Cool. But after we get, then it's the feminine journey, the heroine's journey of like, come into the internal world and like conquer this, not necessarily conquer, but get to know it, come into communion and relationship with it, like really attune to that world because this is where life lives.
Yeah.
And we think it's out here, but it's like, it's here and we just forgot, but we all have access to it and we just have to say yes to it. And the minute we do, it's like, oh, there I am. There's my life. Now, whatever happens out here, great.
Yeah.
I'll take it. Sure. Again, that magnetism turns on and you're like, thank you. I receive. I receive. And that's the irony. Like the minute we don't need it,
It comes
it flows.
100%. And I think, like my whole life, I've had experiences where I've done that. Like once I get this,
Totally.
once I get that. It's like the military. I was like so good to be like, it's the military's fault. I'm injured and da da da.
Right.
The minute I stopped blaming it, they were like, yeah, we're officially medically discharging you, and here's a whole heap of money
Right.
for that. Like,
You're like,
and it
oh,
was just like, huh? Like,
right.
self responsibility is super important.
Huge. Huge.
Yeah.
Because we were just talking about this, Em and I and Preston, because someone in our community posted this post and it was a very like drama triangle post,
Yeah.
like someone's the victim out or the villain out here and I'm the victim and like this has initiated me and blah, 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 which is like, yes. And what about the piece of being in your power and going, cool, okay, what's here for me here? Like,
Yeah.
how did I co-create this? How did I allow this? How did I diminish my own inner voice? How did I abandon that knowing or those values in order to feel loved, to feel accepted, to feel cherished? And again, it's not saying like it's your fault, but there's always, if you're in a relationship with anything, whether it's the military or a person or your business, there are entities at play. It's not just the one thing.
Yeah.
And we've got to look again, energy is talking.
Yeah.
How is this energy moving together?
Yeah.
And if it's in resonance, that's saying something. If it's in dissonance, that's saying something.
Yeah.
And you've got to be responsible for your bit.
100%. 100%. And yeah, I think the thing that I really want to land in here and sort of, I'm just mindful of time and being with, we could talk for hours. But I really want to come back to the initial conversation of the muse because we've talked a lot about the byproduct of her not being available and what happens when we disconnect from her. But I really want to hear your interpretation of when she's actually here. Firstly, who is she? Right?
Yeah.
And like for the woman who's like, I could never be there.
Yeah.
Let's bring her in the journey a little bit because I feel like there's so much talk around feminine dominance. And I actually seen one of my friends post yesterday, which I think is a great intro to this as well. She was like, please stop using the name Carly as an excuse to be like disgusting and powerful and blame men and all this. And I was like, yes,
I'm so with that. It's
So
irresponsible.
It's very irresponsible. And I was like, in that moment, I was just like, yes, queen, like let's talk about it. But I'd love to like sort of have you weave all of this in because a lot of people think the muse is just like the woman who's like, demanding and calling in things. But really, what is she?
So historically, the muse was this external deity or magic force that would come and visit the writer, the artist, the poet, and would whisper in the ears of these great humans who created these great arts, right? These great works. And the artist would never take credit for it themselves and say, oh, this is mine. They'd say, oh, my muse. And they would often speak to the muse as, and there were 7 muses and there's all the things, right?
Yeah, we hear it in the songs and all the things. Yeah.
So there is like a historical connotation to the muse. And Em and I and another friend, when we were kind of going through this initiation into this deeper aspect of ourselves, we were talking about like, what would it be? What would it feel like if we were our own muse? Like if we like integrated this idea of some outer being that whispers and speaks to us, instead of thinking of her as other, we think of her as highest self. We think of her as like most liberated, divine, fullest expression of who you are at your core. And bring her in and say, I am her. I am the muse, right? The muse is me. I am her. And so I do believe this isn't just like a woman conversation. I believe men have muses as well, and it's their highest self. But as it pertains to women, again, we have externalized, but it hasn't been to this creative aliveness of like divine energy coming through. We've externalized into success and recognition and pride and money and more from scarcity. And we said, that's the thing. I'm going to get that. That has value. And when we say, oh, let me put that down and not play that game anymore, and let me see what's available when I just call in my highest self, my most creative, alive, brilliant, full, expansive, infinite self, and I live as her, what's possible then?
Mm.
And then life becomes your art. Life becomes a creative expression of life.
Yeah.
Like instead of life is get up, go to work, make coffee, do the thing, run the errands, get the da, check, 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 drudgery,
Yeah.
right? It becomes art. It becomes music. It becomes a song.
Yeah.
It becomes a stroke of paint, right? And we start to interface with everything a lot differently. Like we start to interface with conversations differently. Like, how can I make this artful? Like we did a lot of work in the Muse with the masculine of like, how can I make this expression artful? And it's going back to your friend's post. A lot of women take the excuse of I'm in my feminine, I'm expressing my feelings, and they're doing it so irresponsibly and through blame and through rage that's pointed versus rage that's wide and
Yeah.
felt versus pointed and blame.
Yeah.
And that's the difference, right?
Yeah.
Shadow feminine, the unhealed, wounded feminine wants to project and blame and be the victim and the martyr
And
and
attack others.
yeah, and you need to change in order
Why
for
me?
Yeah, why me? You need to change in order for me to feel X, Y, and Z. The empowered feminine is I've got me. I don't need you to show up you're gonna show up how you're gonna show up because you're human.
Yeah.
And I've got me so solid. I've got my yes, I've got my no, I've got my desires. I'm in my fullness and not from a closed heart that's pushing you away like, fuck you, I've got me, but like,
Yeah.
I've got me and I see you
Yeah.
and I can meet you. Doesn't mean I'm going to invite you in, but I can love you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that's a really, really strong conversation too, because most women think like when you hear it doesn't mean I'm going to invite you in. Oh, boundary, quick, put up
Yeah.
a boundary,
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
you know, and there's a lot of this boundary movement that's happened, and I love some people's work in it, don't love other people's work in
Totally.
it,
Yeah.
because I feel like the rigidity has actually that's what's closed the heart.
100%.
Yeah.
And it's a boundary from a wound versus a boundary from like a self-protection of I've got me. And this is why I love somatics too, because we talk about the field,
Yeah.
right? When we talk about our length, our width, and our depth somatically, depth is the boundary,
Yeah.
right? It's just like force field of bubble of energy around us that's still permeable,
Yeah.
but it's like a stop and check in. Like, do I invite you into my bubble?
Also, I feel like when it's actually held powerfully like that, like with its dignity,
Yeah.
you don't have to speak it.
100%. You just feel it.
Yeah, people are like, oh, yeah, I can't go there with you. Or like you just, like someone said to me once before, they were like, oh, since I've started getting louder, I get so much hate online. And I'm like, interesting.
Yeah.
I was like, I don't get that.
Yeah.
I did when I was operating from wounds and I was attacking people.
Totally.
But I don't get it when I'm just like, I'm cleaning my energy and I'm just moving from something.
And that's the difference between like clean energy and energy that's got a charge in it.
Yeah.
That's like, I have a covert expectation in this energy of like, I'm going to make you wrong. I'm going to make you bad. I'm going to make society
Shame.
wrong. I'm going to make men wrong. I'm going to make women wrong. I'm going to make this type of behavior wrong. I'm going to make this type of person in the industry wrong. Like when you're creating wrongness, you're creating shame. When you're creating shame, you're usually moving from shame of where you're not yet.
Yes.
And so that's that whole statement of like hurt people hurt people. It's like we don't heal shame with more shame.
Yeah.
Like,
You can't double pack that.
don't.
shit.
You can't double pack that. Like you have to meet shame with like loving compassion, with understanding, with I see you and it's okay. Like it's okay to be in your humanness. The behavior may not be okay, but it's okay.
Yeah.
Right?
It's like I can see that's a behavior that's not you.
That and like that's what even in my parenting, I'm so aware of that now, having taught shame and trauma for so many years. Like this behavior is not okay. I love you. You're okay. You're a good human.
Yeah.
This behavior is not okay.
Well, even like the other week, I said to Tiadiki, you're frustrating me.
Yeah.
And I caught myself in the minute I said it. Guess what he's been saying to people lately? Oh, you're frustrating me. Like they pick it up so quickly.
You're like, damn it, I said that
I
once.
was like, oh, one time. Like
he's not going to let you live that down.
no, like the other day, like Abane was laying in bed because it was Sunday morning and he wanted to relax. And Tiadiki and I had got up and he's like, Daddy, get up with us. And Abane's like, no, buddy, I'm just going to sleep in a bit because he was tired.
Yeah.
And he goes, oh, you're frustrating me. I'm like, oh.
You're like, and noted.
Yeah. So it's just like, but it's so like we consciously create all of these pieces in our world where we direct.
That.
Yeah.
versus like, again, like the art of being in relationship, the art of sharing like, my heart hurts right now.
Mm.
And it hurts because what's the more vulnerable share? Not it
Oh,
hurts because you're bad. That's not vulnerable.
I have a great experience of this, actually. It was the day after our retreat.
Uh-huh.
I don't know if I've shared this with you, but um, like I woke up a bang because I had a VIP client day, like that day at home.
On
And
Tuesday.
on the
Oh,
Tuesday,
wow.
right? So I was in my
Yeah, gooey bubble.
gooey bubble. It was great. However, the house was not set up for a VIP
Right.
day. And so I was like to him, I was like, hey, babe, I need you to wake up and help me clean the house. And I said it fast, but I didn't have any energy towards it.
Yeah.
He's woken up and he's like stomping and he's charging. And at first I was like, what's up your bum? Like
Right.
I was like, fuck this. Like,
Right.
but I caught myself in it.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, this is actually hurting my body because
Yeah.
I'm so open right now.
Yes.
So tender.
Yeah.
And I said to him, I was like, I just need you to stop for a minute because you're actually like, your energy feels like it's punching me in the face and it hurts. And he was just like, oh, and I was like, I just need a cuddle from you.
Nice.
And as soon as I said that, he just like wrapped his arms around me because I was like, I could fight him
Right. Well,
or I could be like, what do I actually want from him?
that.
Like, just be honest about what I need.
And that, as easy as it sounds, right? Like it's so hard in the moment to like go to your little one, your inner child, and go, "Hey, it's okay. We're going to ask for this,"
Yeah.
right? Because she's likely got a story.
And
If
women,
I ask, he's going to say no, or he's going to turn me
Yeah.
down, or he's going to reject me.
the one thing I shared that story with a client and I said, you just need to share what's really alive for you.
Yeah.
She goes, but I don't want to emotionally manipulate him. I'm like, that's not
Ah,
manipulation.
Wow.
But that's how much we've been conditioned to not share what's alive.
Well, and that's such a big piece, right? Specifically for women. And I think it's created this interesting dance
Yeah.
between men and women,
Yeah.
in particular in heteronormative relationships, but even in same-sex relationships. Like I have a couple couples I work with that are same sex, and there's this thing of like, there's one person who doesn't know how to share their emotions because they've been told they're wrong, they're bad, it's too much, it's chaotic, it's bad stuff.
Yeah.
Then we have another person who's been told the same thing or grew up in a house where there was no emotionality shown. So they don't even know how to be with it. And then you put them together and it's just like, who do I need to be in order to be safe? Who do I need to be in order to be safe?
Exhibit A over
Right.
here.
Well, same with
Yeah.
Preston and I, right?
Yeah.
And firsthand experience of like you're then playing this hyper vigilant dance of like, what are you actually feeling right now? And you don't really know because you're both so distant from yourselves that you're not actually in full relationship. You're like in relationship with a part of someone versus their fullness. And that's the work P and I have been really coming into, being married for over a decade now, that we're finally getting to the point where it's like, oh, there you are in your fullness. Hi, nice to meet you. I still choose you, and it's like so simple, but so hard in practice, especially in intimate relationship because there's so much on the line.
Thanks for fast tracking that for me, by
no
the way, because we're like 6 years and just getting to that.
No problem.
But I think it's so true. Like I remember a girlfriend saying to me, Abate and I had been together for like maybe a year, and I was telling her something that we're facing off with. And I was like, I just wish you could be more like him. And she's like, it took 8 years to get here.
Right.
Like it didn't happen overnight. And this is where this conscious thing like of relationships of like, if he's a conscious man, he'll meet me immediately. It's like, no.
No. And that's the thing. Like I tell all my single friends who are like yearning for their person and they put the person as the goal. And like, they think once they get the perfect conscious person who can fully meet them and see them and blah, 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 everything will be, butterflies, unicorns and rainbows. I'm like, that's when the real work starts. Like no matter how much work you do on yourself in a silo of like, I understand myself, I know myself, even I feel myself. When that self, no matter how open and activated it is, whether it's just the mind or it's the mind and the heart, it's the mind, heart, and body, even if you're fully activated in all three wisdom centers and you're showing up in relationship, that is then going to activate all three wisdom centers and go, oh shit, there's a person here I really care about that I want to love me. It's going to activate all your attachment wounds. It's going to activate all the harm and hurt that's been done to you to try and heal it in communion with another in relationship. And I was having a conversation with my friend a couple of days ago about this idea I'm swimming with is like, relationships are like God. It's like the place where you're invited into your God self the most. You're invited into your highest self the most. You're invited into what would love do right now the most? Because it's the part where you want to close the most. It's the part where you want to push away. It's the part where you want to hide. It's the part that's really fucking scary. There's so much on the line. And yet there's so much available if you say yes and lean in together.
100%. But that's exactly why people have the same person, different face.
Totally.
Because it's like the problem's there. Problems there. Resonance, frequency is saying this is a you problem.
That's right.
You can't heal on your own.
People are like, why do I keep attracting the same guy? Because.
Let's just look at what's here.
Right, because you're trying to heal this existential problem that you have created up since childhood through your parents.
100%.
And like we either heal it with this person or we heal it with the next person.
Yeah, and it's so funny because Abane used to always say to me, that's a you problem, go and deal with it. And I'll be like, you know what, I've done like the me problems I can do on my own, but this one's a community one. This is a union. I have to heal it with you. So if you're not willing to deal it with me, I will find the person who is. Like, and I said that to him like maybe 12 months ago. That changed the game.
That's it. That is it, because you could find a new person.
Yeah.
Same shit's going to come up.
Yeah.
Different flavor.
Yeah.
But same shit.
Same context,
same
content.
That's it. That's it, right? And you're going to have to work through that. But the question is, and this is when people go, do I stay or do I go?
Yeah.
No one can ever tell you because we're not in your relationship. But the key piece I always look for is, does this person want to heal this with you?
Yeah, 100%.
Are they willing to like go to war, not with you, but for you?
Yeah.
With their demons, with their wounds, with the parts of themselves and their shame that they have been unwilling to deal with up until now.
Yeah.
Because you're always, when in relationship, once you get past the unicorns and butterflies phase, which is around 6 months, once you get past that and the real starts to show up and the masks start to come down, that's when the work begins.
Yeah.
And if you've got a partner that's like, hey, I'm here to work with you, for us, for our children, for our vision, that is a partner worth staying for.
100%. And that's the piece like that has really allowed us to stay in.
Yeah.
And I think I said to Rebecca, one of our girlfriends, I said to her the other day, I was like, you know what? It's interesting because I don't know if I would have stayed if I didn't have Tiadiki.
Ah, yeah.
And then I caught myself after I said it to her. I was like, it's actually not that Tiadiki is the reason I stayed, but he was a big enough buy-in for me to heal.
Girl, I relate.
Yeah.
I relate. Like at the point where P and I were like, do we stay? Do we go? I'm like, yeah, we got 4 kids.
Yeah.
And I literally said to him, and he said to me at one point where it's like, let's try one more time just for these babies.
Yeah.
Like to give them what we never had, because both of our parents had been married and divorced. Yeah. And like, thank God we did, because on the other side, it's a better relationship than we've ever had, like better than the honeymoon phase.
Yeah.
And like, how crazy is that? You know, we hear all the time that if you just stick it out, like it can get better. But I think, I don't know about you, but pervasively in society, we kind of see like the longer you're with someone, like the more like disconnected you are, and like you're not having fun anymore, you're not having sex anymore. And like we hear all
they say it's like once you're married, life is over. Like,
right. And that's like, imagine that's the conditioning we had for this beautiful workshop of God and love and communion and self and true deep intimacy first with self, so I could be intimate and true with another. Like, what a privilege that is. And yet we just bastardize it and say like, oh, ball and chain, your life's over now. And like, welcome to sexless marriage after 10 years. And you know, it's like, it doesn't have to be that way.
I'm like, I've got a 4-year-old who still sleeps in our bed.
Yeah.
And our sex life is better than before we had a baby.
Yes, girl.
Like, I just think like, and I grew up with my mom. Like my mom had me at just turned 17, right?
Damn,
so very young.
Yeah.
And, you know, she was always like, once you have children, your life will be over and da-da-da-da. And it's interesting because I've watched my journey of not letting that be the case also shift her perspective.
Wow.
Because, like the other day I was on the phone with, this was like maybe 2 weeks ago, before Muse. Yeah. Whenever it was. And I was crying to her on the phone because Abane and I just had a little tiff and a scuffle, and I was like, oh, I'm just like, and she's like, you all right? Like she could just sense that something was wrong. And I'm like, yeah, I'm just having one of those moments where I'm realizing like it's really hard to follow your dreams sometimes. Like it's really hard to choose it, and I'm struggling with it, and I'm just having a moment where it feels fucking hard. And I just started crying. Yeah. And she looked at me and she was like, and this was on FaceTime obviously, and she's like, baby girl, I just want you to remember something. And I was like, what's that? And she goes, you chose to do it with children.
Yeah.
She's like, I didn't. And she goes, I'm so proud of you.
Yes. Oh,
And I was like, and it healed such a big part of me in that moment,
yeah.
because it was like, and I think that was also part of what came alive in Muse.
Yeah.
Because it was like that permission slip of like, I watched her think she had to sacrifice.
That.
Like, you know?
And how often we play that game of either or.
Yeah.
Like it literally, like it almost brought me to tears
Yeah.
just saying that, because it is fucking hard.
Yeah.
Like to do, like I went for a walk with one of my male friends yesterday, and he's like, how are you? And I was like, yeah, I'm really good. I said, I'm swimming in this like this in between of like, wow, being a mom is really beautiful, but really fucking hard. And being a businesswoman is really beautiful and really fucking hard. Being a wife is really beautiful and really fucking hard. And I'm choosing all three, beautiful and hard.
Yeah.
And it's a lot, but it's beautiful. Like, fuck, the amount that I get to feel and experience, and like, it's so much. And then like the hard is so much.
Yeah.
So just really honoring that. Like, it is hard and we're doing it. Like, I feel like we're the first generation that, like, my mom tried to do parenthood and work and kind of sacrifice parenthood a little bit in the journey, because like she was working nonstop.
Yeah.
You know, like she was like daughter of the feminist movement, like work, 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 make money, go. Or there were women that said, oh, I have kids, I have to not do anything.
Yeah.
Right. And I think we're the first generation that's finding the in between and trying to really show up with presence to all the things.
Yeah.
And like we're still figuring it out.
So much so.
Right? Like we do not have the blueprint yet.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
it's a moment to moment dance. And I think this is why having like really amazing friends and community and being in spaces where you can be seen and not try to be fixed in that, because there's nothing to fix.
Yeah.
Like that is a wave that's such a fucking true wave. Like,
100%.
fuck, this is hard.
Yeah.
You know?
And I think too, like, you know, a lot of us put the healing part of like, we've got to put that bit on men.
Right.
And my greatest work, and I've shared with you so much, is like, it's actually no, like, can you allow yourself to be held by a woman?
That.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because that's sometimes the scariest for women.
Yeah. Because it's usually the women who create the story that we have to be this or that.
Totally.
Yeah.
And we're judging each other and comparing ourselves to each other and dragging each other down when someone finally gets up. And there's a deep healing happening in sisterhood right now. Like, so deep. Even like our little portal in Mastery on Monday, like it was so healing because it was just so open. Like there was so much heart in the room and like presence in the room, and we all were just like, oh, we just melted into each other. And it was
I feel like both of us are going to cry right
my
now.
God, it was so beautiful.
Yeah, but I think, you know, for the woman who's never actually had that safety, like I know my mum's tried to be that for me.
Yeah.
But she's actually never felt it.
Totally.
So it's like, how do you be that for someone else when you've never had the container for yourself?
I don't think you can.
Yeah.
And that's like the hard truth, right? Again, like we want to be able to fully show up for the people in our lives. We have to first fully show up for ourselves. And like no amount of strategies and tactics and relationship tips are going to help make those relationships deeper and more full until we're deeper and more full within ourselves. And like that's the inconvenient truth, is the work always starts with you and then ripples out from whatever you're available for.
And I just really want to touch on that as well, because, you know, we've seen it with my family. You've coached a lot of my family now through the work that you've done with me.
Yeah.
And, you know, a lot of people are always like, how did your family get into it? It's like, I stopped trying to make them get into it and I just became the example. And like, I had a moment with my mom after we got back from the last bridge.
Yeah.
I don't know if I shared this. I think I did share it with you, but, she started to have a moment where she was a bit emotional and like just what was happening in her life. And I just grabbed her and held it. She wanted to push away straight away. And I literally squeezed her tighter and I said, let me fucking hold you.
Oh.
And she has referenced that hug to me so many times because it wasn't a hug of like, I'm going to try and control you in this. I just want to love you. And that's where most people don't get it. Because I can see the woman in my mum now. I don't see her as just my mum.
Right.
I see her as a woman who's walked through some shit.
Right. You can relate to her in that way. Because it's like you took her off the pedestal of parent and are seeing her as human.
And same with my dad. Right?
Totally. Yeah. And I think that's the big difference. And like what you said is so powerful about like where you're hugging from, where you're like going into these spaces from. I think a lot of people that don't have the capacity to be with themselves will go into like their family, let's say at like Thanksgiving or Christmas, and go home and try and fix because they
Mm-hmm.
can't be with the discomfort of what's
Yeah.
been bubbling maybe for decades, right?
Yeah.
Versus coming in and just being with someone in this moment and not trying to change them, not trying to fix them, but just loving them where they're at,
Mm.
even if it's uncomfortable, speaks to the work you've done about being with your own inner discomfort
Yeah.
of, oh, it's not fixed, it's not healed, it's not better. And that's okay because
Mm.
I'm human and that
Yeah.
happens.
And I think too, like even to double down on that was like, I've had them in rooms where I'm not in with you guys. And I think a version of me that was 5 years ago would be like, oh, what are they going to think of me?
Right, right, right.
Like, and whereas it's like, we're all so fucking human.
Yes.
Like, we've
Cannot
all,
reiterate that enough.
like, I love my family so much more through doing this work without ever needing to change any of them.
That.
Yeah.
And that's the big get for so many people is, a lot of people when they first get into the work, whatever that is they start to look around and judge the people around them. Like, oh, you need to do this. You need to go to therapy. You have so much shit. You need to heal your stuff. And we get on this high horse of like, I'm now better.
Yeah.
It's like the spiritual ego, right? Like, I'm now better because I've done work and you haven't. Ha ha ha. I know more. I'm more evolved. I'm more conscious. Peon over here.
Yeah.
Right. But meanwhile, like that is the least evolved response. And oftentimes, a lot of women, I'm sure they come to you too, like, oh, my partner's not in the work. And if they were only in the work, and it's like, if you're judging a person for where they're at, that's the work you've got to do.
100%.
Not necessarily, they might be more evolved than you because they can be more present and more alive and have more joy. And you're always trying to fix something that's wrong. That's a more neurotic behavior than someone who's like, I'm just living life,
Yeah.
and yet we've put that on a pedestal as if like, oh, I'm always constantly doing the work. It's like, yeah, but where are you doing the work from? If you're doing it from, I'm trying to fill the void. Again, are you doing it from scarcity and not enoughness and deficiency? Are you doing it from fullness? Oh, I can't wait to experience more of myself. I can't wait to
Yeah.
feel more alive and expanded and expressed.
It changes the game.
Changes the game. Totally
Yeah.
different energy, totally different experience of the work itself.
I feel really good just sitting here listening to you. Now, we've talked a lot about the Muse. You have a program coming up where women can come and play in this space.
Yeah.
I'm in it.
Yes. So Living the Muse, it's a 6-month. It used to be our 3-month signature program. We've extended it to 6 months because we really understand that women need community. We're born into relationship, we are wounded in relationship, and we heal in relationship. And so the healing that takes place over 6 months together, going through the curriculum together, going through deep embodiment practices together, having coaching, having the sisterhood, there's just nothing like it. And when we put ourselves in these vortexes, it's like we can't help but shift because our whole world and our environment is shifting on such a drastic, exponential way that our whole world outside starts to shift as well. And so that starts the end of March, but you can always join the wait list, and we're enrolling kind of, periodically throughout the year. And please, if you can, come to Embody, our 3-day in-person retreat. If you want to feel yourself and experience yourself in a whole new way.
And all the things that we've talked about, I've personally received in
like
this.
there is just nothing like it. There's nothing like it. Em and I created this event out of a deep yearning to pull all the pieces together that we had studied and really created ourselves to heal through some of our deepest stuff. And so it's a portal. So
I don't even think that does it justice, that word.
But it is a portal. And that's all I can say because it's ineffable. Like you cannot put into words what a woman who comes alive unto herself fully, like comes home to herself fully. There are no words for that. It's fucking magic. And it's the best thing ever to witness a room full of women in their fullness.
100%.
Like goosebumps.
Yeah.
And we do that twice a year. So, awakenthemuse.com/embody. You can sign up for that, the wait list for that. And come play with us. It's a whole world that can feel really scary for the woman that's like, body? What body? Like I've been living for my head for so many years. It's a really grounded approach to women's work and
100%.
to feminine work. And, I know one of my biggest frustrations with the feminine space was how like fluff it felt and how woo it felt and how like, let's say like pussy and run around with feather boas. And it's like, cool. Yes. Love that for you.
Yeah.
And like, I'm such an earth mama. Like, I'm a Virgo, like earth sign. Like, I need grounded, grounded, grounded. I need science backed. I need all the things to make it feel really alive.
But that's also what makes it so like trustworthy and safe, I find, because like the fluffy feminine never resonated with me. And I think that's why I denied it for so long.
Same. I judged
Yeah,
it. I
yeah.
so judged it.
But like, you know, the work that I've done with you over the years, it's like that's what's actually allowed the fullness of like, it's like a different level of depth.
Yeah, it's a different texture because we're not just wanting to play in pleasure and the erotic energy, like that's a part of it, but we play with a full range of what it means to be human. And there's a depth to that. There's a real like earthy bottom that has to be experienced and felt before we can really access those higher parts.
Yeah. So true.
Yeah.
So true. So I'm going to put all of those details in the show notes so everyone can find them.
Amazing.
Also find you on Instagram.
Yes. At Alexi Panos. Find me there. Come to the bridge as well. If you're like, hey, I want something soon. We've got the bridge basically once
You'll get us both in one room.
Yes, you will.
In April.
That's right.
In pretty much every bridge, but definitely.
Yeah. We're in Austin primarily, but then we'll like sneak out and go to Australia once a year.
Yeah.
So find us on our website, thebridgemethod.org or bridgeexperience.com. So check us out there.
That's how I found you. Well, I found you before that, but that was my first place where I worked with you, and it's life-changing.
It's the best because you get back into the body and the body knows way more than your head does.
100%. 100%. Thank you for coming on here. And
so good.
I know we've shared so much, and I reference you through so much of my work, and I think it's so important to have the listeners who hear it from the direct source. So.
Yeah. Thank you for having me. This is like, again, we could talk for hours.
So much.
So much.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Embodied Business.